Hi, I'm Ross Bentley,
Hi, I'm Jeff Braun,
and
and
this
this
is
is
No
no
Dumb
dumb
Questions.
questions.
Uh,
That may be our best one, but
Maybe,
we finished off pretty good.
yeah, yeah. And maybe it's because we were both completely remote this time. We're
Right.
both in, yeah.
Neither
So,
one of us are home. That's the kind of the racing business. You home is you have to look at your room key to see where home is.
yeah, yeah. How many times have you actually walked back to the hotel and you're looking at that card and you're going, is it 334 or is it 134 this week?
Yeah, I've been taking. I just snap a picture when I get to my room the first time, and it stays on my phone for the weekend.
Well, see, you're way smarter than me, but yeah. Yeah, and we
Oh,
both have been doing just a little bit of driving this week. You've been driving your motorhome back from Mosport, Canadian Tire
yep.
Motorsport Park.
Yep. I've it's a 1,800 mile trip and one way, and so I'm about 400 miles from home. So one tonight, and then I'll be home tomorrow finally. So yeah,
And
and
I'm in the
you're
middle
with
of
your
a
Lotus.
week long trip in the Lotus Elan with my wife, and we're driving, looking for twisty roads, and have found a couple of really cool. Yesterday was an amazing driving day, so um,
Nice,
having
nice.
a little bit of a break and doing some family and friend stuff for a few days here. So yeah,
That's good. Yeah, I missed you at Mossport, but anyway, it worked out good for one of us in our family there. So we'll take that.
yeah.
Okay, I got. Let's start a question.
Okay.
We got a bunch of them, which is great. So keep sending them. But this one was from Kyle B via Instagram. So you can get a hold of us. However, Instagram works great too. He said, as the connection between engineer and driver builds, but you notice a driver seems to find the same person and they get into their head. How do you go about getting the mentality out of the way? To that same end, how do you as a driver clear your mind of finding that same person repeatedly and run your own race?
Mm.
And so I replied, I asked him just to make sure. I said to Kyle, I said, I'm assuming you mean a driver is always battling on track with the same competitor. And how do you help him forget it and do his own race? And he said, yes. So,
Yeah. Really good question. And it brings to mind a couple of coaching situations that I've been in, a couple of stories. One was quite a number of years ago, coaching a driver in the Formula Atlantic series, the Pro Formula Atlantic series. And the driver that I was coaching, he and another driver seemed to find each other in every single race. They either, they would qualify, one in front of the other, or vice versa, every single race. And unfortunately, they seemed to, like, it was like their cars were magnetic. They tended to bump into each other a lot. And a couple of things out of that one that was interesting was my driver, and let's call him Dave. Um, uh, Dave almost got to the point where he's like, "Man, I seem to be unlucky. Like, it just seems like in every single race, I'm unlucky because Steve or whatever, I can't remember what the guy's name was actually. The two of them would run into each other, and he says, I seem to have bad luck." So, actually, one of the things that I did was uh, I had what did I call him? Dave. I had Dave do mental imagery, do visualization of being lucky, and I know that seems kind of weird, but he would just, over a matter of like every single day, twice a day, once in the evening before bed, once in the morning, I'd have him do 15 to 20 minutes of mental imagery where he would see himself in different situations where, one of those things where you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time and a car just spins in front of you, or, drops a wheel and right in front of you and things go bad. Well, in this case, he would see himself like things just opened up and other people around him would have the bad luck, but he got lucky. And it almost like it started to build he built this little trigger around, I'm lucky, I'm lucky, I'm lucky. And it's interesting how it was like his belief in being unlucky. And I don't know if Kyle's actually referring to the finding, I'm doing in air quotes here, the other driver. Uh, in this case, they would actually bump into each other. So by taking this and over a matter of a few weeks, my driver Dave became luckier. And so they no longer bumped into each other. Now, he did sort of get into this mindset of, what did I call him, Steve? Steve was that guy, was always around that guy. And we actually did two things. We had kind of two completely polar opposite approaches. And one was, in the beginning, I kind of started to have Dave, my driver, play around with this idea that, Steve was this bad person. And he started actually, because my driver was kind of into music and stuff, he started writing little songs about Steve, and Steve was this and Steve was that, and kind of making it fun, though, like not in a nasty kind of way, but just in a fun kind of way. And we did that for, I'm going to say, 3 or 4 months through the race season. And then I remember going to him one time and saying, okay, we're switching strategies here, because that actually worked, but they still seem to be around each other a lot. And I changed the strategy, and it was, there is no Steve anymore. There's we'll call it car 10.
Right.
And kind of taken the personality out of the equation and made it there is nobody in that car. It's just a car. And one of the things about a car is it's just a component that changes the track layout. Almost think about the car as they've changed the curbing on the inside of turn 5, or the track has got a bunch of dirt thrown on it at the entry to so and so corner. And so the car actually became a
Inanimate object.
yeah, there you go, an inanimate object, and it just became part of the track surface that
Sure.
my driver kind of needed to work around, and it made it less personal. And that, all of a sudden, I don't know if it was just that, but a number of other things. It just seemed that now all of a sudden he was no longer qualifying next to each other, but now my guy was consistently qualifying 2, 3, 4, 5 positions ahead of him, and they no longer kind of met up on the track anymore. So,
Makes sense.
I don't know, it's kind of one of those, there is no, what's the scientific method of testing something and then, trying to prove that it's right or wrong. I couldn't go back and take that stuff away and go, oh,
Right.
okay, now this works or doesn't work. So I can't prove it, but I think the strategy of doing mental imagery around being lucky, and I would ask Kyle, like, if this was Kyle, for example, the always finding that other car, is that what you believe now? Like, if you just
Right.
close, yeah, I'd say to Kyle, just close your eyes, see yourself racing wheel to wheel. Where's that other car? And if he said, well, it's right there in front of me or right behind me, I'd go, okay, well, that's your belief system. Like, that's part of what you believe now. And that's part of your mental programming. So the first step is actually changing your mental programming away from that driver, and
Yep.
and just getting out there, and then then becoming, I would say, depersonalizing the situation, where it's not that guy, it's not Steve or whoever, whatever the guy's name is. It's no longer that person. It's just, there's a car there, and that car could be the 10 car, it could be the 33 car, it could be the 2 car, it could be the 52 car, it could be, you name it, it could be that car. It's just a component of the racetrack that you
Yeah.
need to position your car and work around. So
That makes sense. It's interesting, I guess, as an engineer, because I was trying to think of when that's happened to me. Okay, so I don't battle against another engineer necessarily, but my drivers certainly have had rivalries with the same guy in a points championship, or the same guy week in and week out that they're battling against. And it's, okay, don't worry about that guy. He's just another car, like you said. Just try to ignore that. And then one time I remember thinking about it and thinking, well, there's other sports where that happens, and the sports are actually set up to encourage that. Boxing. I mean, it's just you and him. You can't ignore the guy. I mean, you are finding the same guy every boxing match or every round. I mean, same thing with, you could even take whatever, football, American football. The quarterback's going to go against that defensive line all game, and he's going to go find those guys every play. So what I did was, okay, so we got to beat this guy. Let's know more about him than he knows about himself. Where is he good? What sectors of the track is he good? Is he really good in the braking, in the accelerating, in the this and the that? And how can we take advantage of that knowledge to beat this guy? Because just getting all upset and having him in your head doesn't help. Let's find where our strengths are or our weaknesses are and make those stronger so that we can use that against them. Or, so we kind of took it that way. And it took a little, it took some hand timing. We didn't have segment times at the time. We went out to, okay, he's really good in turn 3 and we're not. We got to get better in turn 3 because it leads onto the long straightaway and that's the way we pass him or whatever. We made it a challenge and try to take just like you did, take the personal out of it. He's just another guy. But how are we going to beat this other guy? What's the best way to beat him? Let's find his weaknesses and attack those. I don't know.
Yeah, spoken, as an engineer, I'm pretty sure you have a spreadsheet created for that. And
we did.
I mean, that's perfect. A great way to approach it as well. And then, I'm going to say the sort of the last or the final piece of that, I think is building a trigger around, it's the example I use all the time. Right now, don't think about a pink elephant. Don't think about a pink elephant. Do not think about it. Well, you cannot not think about it. So it's the last part of Kyle's question is around how do you clear your mind from that? It's having a trigger. It's having that thing, and it could be as simple as eyes up, look ahead, and then it's you run that through in your mind enough times of, I'm thinking a little bit about Steve, and I'm racing against him again, and it's like, no, just eyes up, look ahead, and you're focused on what you should be doing. You're focusing on the act of driving rather than the that competitor that you're racing wheel to wheel with at that moment in time. And I think I'm going to say that's the thing that the best drivers do better than the less than best drivers. And I would say that some of them have a very formal and deliberate process for doing that. Some drivers, it's just something that some people might say what comes more naturally to them to not think about those things. But I'm going to suggest that it's something that they learned through the years, whether it's from racing and karting or sim racing or playing other sports, where they found that if they focus on what they want and what they don't want almost doesn't exist anymore.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I think your trigger thing has helped a lot. I know a lot of drivers, because that gets you to stop thinking about things that aren't helpful and start thinking about things that are helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, this Steve guy, it's him again. That doesn't help you.
No.
Your eyes up and whatever you said, be smooth or whatever. That does help you. That. So I like that trigger thing. And that works. I know you've used that for multiple things. Okay, it's time to qualify. Where you have a trigger that's going to put you in qualifying mode or whatever. And that's great advice. I think Kyle, he'll go get him.
Yeah, yeah, and I think Jeff, you have over the years used a trigger phrase for drivers that you're working with, you're engineering, right? I mean, what is it that you most often say to a driver just before they leave the box or they leave whatever and head out on to qualify or to race? What's the last thing you say to them?
Have fun.
Yeah, and for a lot of drivers, that becomes the trigger of I
Right.
just want to focus on what is fun. What is fun? It's the act of driving, and it's not the I'm racing against Steve again.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
It's the chance to go. I mean, yeah. So this last weekend, I guess we're kind of dating this podcast, but we talked about it already. Mossport. I mean, I worked with a new team and a new driver. I was filling in for a team that had an engineer that had a health issue, and I just last minute fill in. And they were new drivers to me, and I said, "Man, you are driving an LMP3 car at Mossport. How? I mean, don't worry about anything else, man. This is fun. This is like,
yeah,
how much cooler can this be? Just go have fun." And I think that kind of settles them down, and they're like, "Yeah, okay, it's not the end of the world. This is pretty awesome. I'm going to go do that." So that's a good trigger too.
yeah. And Kyle, thanks for asking the question. As you said, Jeff. I mean, for those of you listening, feel free to send in more. But Kyle, I think maybe that's all the simple. Probably could have answered it in one sentence.
Right,
It's just simply if you focus on having fun, and maybe having fun is racing that driver,
right,
and that's okay. So
right.
yeah,
Turn it into fun.
yeah,
There's some great rivalries where there's good fun rivalries. Okay, yeah, that's good advice. Good
yeah.
advice. I like it. I like it.
Okay, so let's switch around here, and I
Okay.
have a question for you, Jeff, and I'm going to pick this one. Uh, Came from Ron Van Tool. I'm going to totally destroy your last name, Ron, so I apologize for that. But fairly short question. It says, I drive a Radical SR3 and was curious at what speed does aero downforce start happening? Also, can you comment on the reasons you would change ride height or wing angle? So,
Oh,
a couple of
yeah.
good questions. And I mean, I've been asked the question about when does aero start happening? There's a magic number there. It's 51.36. No, it's not. Yeah.
Right, right. The real answer to that when aero downforce starts happening is 0.00001 miles per hour.
Ah,
Now, is there very much at that point? Not very much. But the minute air starts flowing over a shape, it could be lift too, depending on the shape of your vehicle. But aero, lift, drag, and downforce start happening. Okay, that's not the answer Ron wanted. He wants to know. I get a lot of people that ask me, "Oh, I don't have." They'll say, "I don't have an aero car, so how would I do this setup, or how would I adjust this?" And I'm like, "You do have an aero car. If it's a race car, you know, even a go kart has aerodynamics. You see drivers on the front straightaway in national championship races ducking down behind the steering wheel, pulling their head down. They're not doing that because they want to look at their gas tank. They're doing that because they want to reduce the drag. It's an aero vehicle. It's going through the air. But I know kind of what he means. It's like when is the aero overpowering parts of the other car that might be more important? And I'll say a Radical SR3 is more of an aerodynamic car than a Mazda Miata or a big, well, I was going to say a Corvette. They're pretty good. But I mean, it's more like a single seater. That car is going to make some significant downforce, enough so that it will affect the performance of the car at 60 miles an hour. If the corner is 40 plus miles an hour, 60 miles an hour for sure, the downforce in an SR3 matters. even in GT3 cars. I mean, the current GT3 cars, man, those things, the aerodynamics on those cars, the downforce they produce is staggering. It's like the old Daytona prototype levels in a GT3 car. So it starts happening for Ron's car. It starts happening pretty fast. That's an aero car making downforce at pretty much any track he goes to. And that's a big adjustment for that car. And, you know, if your car has a wing and splitters, if it's a GT car with a splitter in the front and a wing on the back, that's, you know, aero plays an important part of it. Tuning the aerodynamics and the aero balance is an important part of going quick with those cars. So he asked, when would you change ride height or wing angle? So the way to look at that, because you have to prioritize, right? Okay, you know the question I always ask drivers, what's the one thing you want the car to do better?
Yeah.
Well, if you answer that and it's concerns a high-speed corner, and I mean high speed as in every track has its fastest corner, its second fastest corner, its third fastest corner. If it's in the top 2 or 3 corners as far as speed on that track, then you need to work on the aerodynamics first. If you have adjustments like splitter, wing angle, ride height, in Ron's case with a radical ride height and wing angle for sure. And you would adjust those, you would go to those if your issue or how the balance of the car where you liked it the least was in faster type corners, because it'll have more effect than a spring rate change or an anti-roll bar change or things like that. Now, that's kind of a blanket statement. The problem is all of that interacts, especially in a car, a sports racer with a flat bottom. How you control that flat bottom affects the aerodynamics. So if you let it roll too much with soft anti-roll bars, it may go slower, not because the anti-roll bars are soft, but because they're soft, the bottom of the car is rolling and you're losing downforce. So it's all kind of related. Don't forget that in a car like that, especially sports cars with big flat bottoms or GT cars with big flat bottoms, the mechanical setup influences the aerodynamic setup quite a bit. Single seaters the same way. You know, you want to keep that wing consistent. You want to keep the end plates close to the ground and the front wings. You want to keep that consistency of front downforce by not letting it roll too much or dive too much under braking or pick up the front under accelerating. So it all kind of works together. But the easy way is if it's in a fast corner and fast, okay, you know, maybe your track only has a fastest corner is 100 miles an hour. Or maybe you're at Road America in a LMP2 car and the kink is 170 miles an hour. Still, if it's a fast corner, look to the aero first. Look to ride height changes. Look to wing angles to get the balance right. Because I'm going to use my blanket statement. Anything over 60 miles an hour, pretty much every race car is being influenced by aero enough so that changes to that aerodynamic could be felt by the driver.
So, Jeff, you mentioned 60 miles an hour, and you know, a lot of people that are, I'm going to say, data experts or that understand using data, and you know, one of the kind of rules of thumb, and not a rule, but a rule of thumb, which is what guideline is, you know, corners that are in that 60 to 65 mile an hour range. If you look at the speed trace, if it's less than 60, you probably want to drive that corner in a way that the speed comes down and is a fairly more like a V shape where the speed comes down and then it reaccelerates again. So it goes back up again. So it's more of in slow, out fast kind of a corner. If you start to get to 60, 65 miles an hour, you want that shape of that speed trace to be more of a U, where it comes down and kind of gently rolls along the bottom and then back up again. So you're thinking a little bit more about carrying the momentum through the corner. The aero is contributing to that. Is that?
I would say, yeah, I would say the aero is definitely contributing. And I would say that in that 60 mile an hour corner or 65 mile an hour corner, we're talking like min speed. But you don't enter that corner at 60 and then put the brake on and go around at 60 and then accelerate and only get up to 60. You're still like, we use the term when we're looking at a lot of things on the data and what we want to do with different setups, springs, bars, even kind of more esoteric things like bump rubber, packer gaps, things like that, is are we grip limited? So if you're looking at data and you are not grip limited at that point, in other words, you can go as fast as you want. You can mash the gas. It's a part of the track where you're not limited in your speed by the grip. You're only limited because of the power, for instance. So, if you're grip limited in a corner that is, again, I'm just using 60. I mean, there's some Formula SAE cars that make massive downforce at 30 miles an hour. They have these monster wings bigger than a sprint car and giant side pods. And they win the Formula SAE competitions and they never get over 45 miles an hour on the course, but they have so much downforce that they win. And so, again, it depends. We're talking a radical here at 60 miles an hour. At a 60 mile an hour min corner, you're probably what? I don't know. You're getting there at 100. At how you get into the corner with the downforce and the balance getting to that 60 miles an hour is important. How it comes off the corner, that if it picks the front up and it gets a giant understeer at 60 miles an hour because it doesn't have the downforce, that's still still an important part of that to get it through that slow 60 mile an hour corner.
So going back to Ron's second part of his question about can you comment on the reasons you would change ride height or wing angle? Can you comment on and I know there's no blanket, this is the answer, but, there may be a time when you can, let's say, raise the rear ride height of the car, which actually then increases the rear wing angle at the same time. How much do you play around with, okay, I'm going to raise the rear of the car, whatever, a 16th of an inch or, 2 millimeters or whatever it is you want to do. You're going to raise the rear of the car that amount. At the same time, you have to adjust the rear wing angle to either get the same aero to not increase the drag by sticking the wing more up in the air. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at is how often are you playing around with, okay, I'm making this change of ride height, so I have to change something in the rear wing angle at the same time. And maybe it's you raise the rear of the car to get the rear wing angle. I don't know. So comments.
Good question. So, especially in a sports car, a radical, even a GT car with a big flat bottom again, it's raising the ride height has more effect on how the bottom of that car works than it does on the wing angle. I really never consider the change in the wing angle when I change ride heights. As a matter of fact, I even measure my wing angles based off the reference plane of the car. So I'll take a frame rail and I'll zero my angle finder on that frame rail, and then I'll check my wing angle. So it's relative to the car, not to the ground. And the reason is, is a lot of the flow over a rear wing is influenced so heavily by the shape of the car that, yeah, when you raise the rear ride height, you're sticking the wing higher up in the air. And if you could lower that, you would get less drag. And that's something we do with sports cars all the time. We try to run softer rear third springs to let the back of the car sink down, to pull that wing out of the air. That's an important thing. But from a downforce standpoint, you're raising or lowering the rear ride height is going to have a much bigger effect on the what we call the center of pressure, where the pressure from that bottom of the car, the floor, is positioned between the axles. When you raise the rear, the center of pressure moves forward and you get more of the overall downforce that the flat bottom produces on the front axle. If you lower the rear, you get more on the rear axle. And that has more of an influence than the actual slight change in the wing angle that you have. So you can almost ignore that unless you're at Indy and you know, or Le Mans, where you really need to pull that wing out of the air. I wouldn't be too concerned with that increased wing angle. Now, to actually go and change the flap angle, change the angle of the wing, how do you decide whether you would do that over ride height? It's all about efficiency. You want to get, if you want more downforce on the front of your car, or let's actually take it an easier way. You want more downforce on the rear of your car. It's loose into the corner, and you need more rear downforce, more rear grip. But you could put more wing in it, add wing, and the wing would produce more downforce and give you more grip. It's the answer, right? Well, you could also lower the rear of the car, which would move the center of pressure backwards and give you more rear downforce. Take some off the front and put some more on the rear. Which one do you do? Well, you want to do the one with the least impact to the drag of the car, which is the most efficient. We talk about L over D, which is lift over drag, which is an airplane term. We're really talking about, it should be D over D, downforce over drag. But you want to make the change that's the most efficient, that has the least effect on your downforce. On your drag. And I'll give another general 51% of the time here. If you can do it with ride height and get the balance you want without having to add more rear wing, 51% of the time, that's a good answer. That helps because it's more, generally the flat bottom, the floor of a car is more efficient. In other words, if you want to make 20 more pounds of rear downforce, changing the ride height, the floor will do that more efficiently with less drag penalty than making 20 more pounds of downforce with the rear wing. So the way to start is with the ride height change, the rake change, the floor, because they're generally more efficient. Now, there's a lot of other things that wing angles help. You can get into the braking. Sometimes drag is good. It helps your braking. The old parachute effect where it helps stability under braking. If you think of a dragster, when the parachute comes out, that thing goes in a straight line. It pulls it straight. Well, wings kind of do the same thing. If you add downforce, you'll help the stability into a corner. So there's a lot of things going on. I can't say to do one over the other, but I can tell you that generally ride height and rate changes are more efficient, less drag penalty than just tipping more wing into it.
Sounds like a pretty complicated set of compromises that you could have just answered it with 2 words, right? It depends. It depends.
Right. It depends. And I find nobody really likes that. They ask depends on what, and then you end up talking about it for an hour.
Yeah.
It's really hard. People probably understand. They know, anybody listening to this, I'm sure, knows what a wind tunnel is, and it's designed. One of the things is, I get questions, well, you have a a GT car that's homologated, or an LMP2 or LMP3 car that are homologated. You can't change the wings or can't change parts. You can't shape it differently. Why do you go to a wind tunnel? And one of the reasons is to answer those questions. Like, how much downforce do we make when we raise the rear 4 millimeters? Is that better than raising the wing 1 degree? What are the efficiencies involved? So that when we get to the track and our driver says, man, it's terrible into the corner, it wants to spin out, and we decide we want to make an aerodynamic change, we know the most efficient way to do that. Because we could throw a wing into it, it would help for sure. But maybe it costs too much drag. Maybe we could get the same result with less drag. And the wind tunnel tells us all of those things, how to better adjust our car. And so, I'm sure somebody's put a Radical SR3 in the wind tunnel. They're probably unlikely to want to give that information away, but it's out there. And, all I can say is generally wings are draggier than floors. And if you have a tunnel car, a car that has tunnels, for sure, they're very efficient. The tunnels on a car are very efficient. Go there first. It's the same thing with, it's surprising to find out how good a gurney flap is on the end of your wing. Very efficient. It makes a lot of downforce for a fair amount of drag, but it's very efficient. It makes the wing work so much better. So, and some of those decisions, now that thinking about it, are based on who you're racing against. I mean, sometimes just being less draggy will get you past the guy. And so sometimes you'll take, less drag and less downforce just to race a guy better. So, there's a lot. It's a lot.
I think you and I are have been in agreement on when you go racing, it's a whole lot easier to pass somebody on the straightaway. Take the aero out of the car, get down the straightaway as fast as you can. If everybody's stacked up behind you in the middle of the corner because you're so slow in the middle of the corner, they're still behind you.
Exactly. And the operative phrase there is, if everybody's stacked up behind you in the middle of the corner. And that's the key. There's a track. I mean, Road America is that conundrum in any car I've ever raced there, from a Pro Mazda, which is a little single-seater thing, all the way up to, DPI cars, Indy cars. You can run the same lap time at Road America with a lot of downforce, or you can run the same lap time with very low drag. And the question always becomes, what do you do? And I've made that decision after qualifying. Oh, we're starting in the back. Well, we can't pass these guys in the corner. Let's trim it out, get ahead of them all on the straightaways, and hold them up in the corners. So I don't know. It's why it's fun. There is no right answer. You can't. Everybody would bolt the same setup on and just go if there was a right answer.
And I think it's interesting this year in watching Formula One with the Williams car, which is a very slippery car. It gets down the straightaway super fast. And the number of times, like in the Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal, Alex Albon is people are not able to pass him, even though he's not the fastest guy around, but people can't get past him because he just gets down the straightaway fast. So, yeah. So going back to Ron's question, I guess and this is a bit of a cop out, I guess a little bit is it depends. It depends on what are you looking for? The ultimate one lap, fastest lap in qualifying, or you're looking for what's going to get you the race win in a pack of cars that have all qualified in around the same lap times. So there's lots of, or just, are you, like you said, are you starting back a ways? Are you starting at the front? I mean, there's a lot of other factors to be played into there. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And those SR3s, those radicals, those things are they're way developed. So it's not like you're just going to unlock nowadays some magic secret to a SR3. I mean, the magic secrets everybody knows by now. And so it's going to be close. And so efficiency becomes important. You know, the current GTP cars, that is the ultimate, well, maybe not the ultimate, I don't know, Formula E maybe, but that's all about efficiency, energy usage. They're picking aero setups based on efficiency and energy usage and tire degradation and things like that. It's not about being the fastest and having the most horsepower or the most downforce. It's about being the most efficient in all of those things. Make the most power by using the less gas or less electrical energy or total energy. And racing is kind of going in that direction. It's about efficiency. Engine design is that. It's all about efficiency. And so even on a Radical SR3, it's about being efficient. Make downforce without drag.
And then we could throw in one other factor. There's still a human driving that car. And at some point, your preferences as a driver, are you a driver that likes to brake late and hard and stuff it into the corner, or are you the little bit lighter, a little bit earlier, slow speed through the corner, all of those kinds of things? What type of corners do you enjoy the most? The slow ones, the fast ones, whatever it is. So, like you said, if it was just easy, like, hey, always put this setup on, always drive this way. Well, you and I wouldn't be talking right now. We'd probably have real jobs.
Oh no, real jobs, really?
Oh.
Do we actually have to do that?
Oh.
No, okay, we can't have that. We can't have that. No, I mean that's what makes it fun, and so all Ron can do is ask questions like that. Do I do ride height or do I do wing? And the cool thing about it is he has a Radical SR3. I'm assuming he drives. Yeah, he said I drive an SR3, so he gets to go drive it. Try some of it. You know, just okay. Put 1 degree of wing in, go drive. Then take that 1 degree out and go lower the rear. I don't know, pick a number, 3 millimeters, and go drive. And see which one gave you more rear downforce. And if you have a data system, look at what happened to your top speed and start to do your own kind of little wind tunnel testing and understand it yourself. Which is the most efficient? That's the fun part.
Yeah. Actually, no, the fun part is you and I get to talk about this stuff. And I guess we'll do another one, won't we?
Let's do another one. I think we should. This can't be the last one.
Yeah, well, maybe not yet, quite.
Okay.
Yeah, until we get fired by our boss.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Who is that?
I thought you were the boss.
No, I thought you were the boss.
No. Actually, I know who the boss is, the people listening to this. So you guys can fire us or not.
Right. If they stop listening, we're done.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Jeff, I think you said it earlier on. Have fun.
I'm saying the same. Go out and drive your cars and learn and keep having fun. That's the most important thing.
Yep. See you in the next show.
See you around.